My son's wife told me I couldn't attend their holiday dinner, so I hosted my own instead. My name is Frances Williams, a 67-year-old retired elementary school teacher from Portland. For most of my life, Thomas and I shared everything. That changed when he married Stephanie 2 years ago. The distance grew slowly, like winter frost creeping across a window. Still, nothing prepared me for that phone call 2 weeks before Christmas. "We think it's best if you don't join us this year," Stephanie said, her voice cold and final. The pain struck deep like a physical blow, but sitting alone in my kitchen, something unexpected sparked inside me. If I couldn't join their holiday, I would create my own. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to difficult in-laws or family situations. I've found sharing these stories helps us all feel less alone. The tension with Stephanie didn't appear overnight. It built slowly after my husband Robert passed away 5 years ago from heart failure. During those first months of grief, Thomas was my rock. At 34, he had established himself at a respected accounting firm in Portland, but still made time for weekly Sunday brunches and daily phone calls. His warm laughter and thoughtful advice kept me connected to life when all I wanted was to retreat into memories of the 40 beautiful years I'd shared with Robert. "Mom, you need to eat something besides toast," Thomas would say, arriving with grocery bags full of fresh ingredients. He'd cook while I sat at the kitchen counter sharing stories about my week. Those small gestures saved me during the darkest days of grief. 3 years ago, Thomas mentioned a new colleague at work. "Her name is Stephanie Lawrence," he said, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. "She's brilliant with international tax law." Within weeks, Stephanie dominated our conversations. Within months, Thomas brought her to Sunday brunch. I still remember that first meeting. Stephanie arrived in an immaculate pantsuit, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun designer handbag, matching her shoes perfectly. She offered a practiced smile and a firm handshake. "Your home has such character, Frances," she said, eyes scanning my comfortable but well-worn furniture. Very different from the modern downtown condos most people prefer now. I tried not to take offense. "Robert and I bought this house when Thomas was just a baby. 40 years of memories in these walls." "That's sweet," she replied with a tight smile. "But doesn't it feel a bit cluttered with all these old things?" Thomas jumped in. "Mom's an amazing cook. Wait until you try her cinnamon rolls." Later, as I served my signature brunch, Stephanie picked at her food. "This is delicious," she said unconvincingly, "but so rich. I usually just have a protein shake in the mornings." Looking back, I should have recognized these comments as warning signs. Instead, I told myself she was nervous meeting her boyfriend's mother. I resolved to try harder. When Thomas announced their engagement 6 months later, I embraced Stephanie warmly. "Welcome to the family," I said, meaning every word despite my reservations. The wedding planning revealed more cracks in our relationship. Stephanie and her mother, Patricia, controlled every detail. My suggestions for incorporating elements from Thomas's childhood or our family traditions were politely dismissed. "We're going for a very specific aesthetic," Stephanie explained when I offered Robert's mother's lace for the veil. "Maybe save those old things for someone else." At the wedding, I sat in the front row smiling through tears as my only child committed himself to a woman who seemed determined to erase his past. The reception featured none of Thomas's favorite foods, music, or traditions. When the MC asked me to share a few words, Stephanie's mother interrupted. "We're running behind schedule," Patricia announced, "so we'll need to skip some of the speeches." The microphone was whisked away before I could object. After the wedding, Thomas's calls became less frequent. Our Sunday brunches dwindled from weekly to monthly to whenever we can make it. When they did visit, Stephanie dominated conversations with stories about their friends, people I'd never met, or complaints about coworkers. I noticed changes in Thomas, too. He became quieter, more subdued. His easy laughter grew rare. He checked his phone constantly, texting updates to Stephanie about where he was and when he'd return. Last Thanksgiving provided a preview of this year's Christmas exclusion. Thomas called 2 days before the holiday. "Change of plans, Mom," he said, sounding stressed. "Stephanie's parents invited us to their country club. Stephanie feels we should go there instead. But we always have Thanksgiving together," I said, fighting to keep disappointment from my voice. I've already bought the turkey and made your father's stuffing recipe. I know. I'm sorry. Maybe we can come by for dessert. They never made it for dessert. A text at 8 p.m. claimed they were too full to drive across town. The photos Stephanie posted online showed them playing golf the next morning, apparently not too full for physical activity. I spoke to Thomas about my concerns once during a rare moment alone. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" I asked. "You seem different lately." His defenses rose immediately. "What's that supposed to mean? Stephanie has been nothing but good for me. She's helping me network with the right people for my career." "I just miss you," I admitted. "We hardly talk anymore." "That's normal, Mom," he said with an edge to his voice I'd never heard before. "I'm married now. You need to accept that things change." I backed off, afraid of damaging our fragile connection, but each month my son seemed to drift further away, pulled by currents I couldn't navigate. The phone call came exactly 13 days before Christmas. I was decorating the small artificial tree Thomas and I had picked out together years ago, carefully hanging the ornaments he'd made in elementary school alongside the delicate glass balls Robert and I had collected during our marriage. When my phone rang and I saw Stephanie's name instead of Thomas's, a sense of foreboding washed over me. We rarely communicated directly without Thomas as an intermediary. "Hello, Stephanie," I answered with forced cheerfulness. "How are you?" "Fine, Francis," she replied, her tone businesslike. "I'm calling about Christmas dinner." My heart lifted. Perhaps they were finalizing details. I'd already bought ingredients for Thomas's favorite dishes. "Yes, I was thinking of making Robert's prime rib recipe this year. Thomas always loved—" "Actually," Stephanie interrupted, "that's why I'm calling. We've decided to have a more intimate gathering this year. Just Thomas, myself, my parents, and a few of Thomas's colleagues from work, including his boss." I gripped the phone tighter. "Oh, well, I'd be happy to meet his colleagues." "That's sweet, Francis, but our condo has limited space, and honestly, it's important for Thomas to make connections with these people for his career advancement. My mother has planned everything to impress his boss." The implication was clear: I would not impress them. "I see," I managed to say, though my throat had gone dry. "Perhaps I could see you both Christmas morning, just for a quick exchange of gifts." A pause. "We'll be at my parents' beach house Christmas Eve through the weekend. It's an exclusive community with security gates. Very hard to get visitor passes." The excuses were as transparent as they were painful. I was being excluded, plain and simple. "Did Thomas agree to this?" I asked, unable to believe my son would willingly abandon our traditions. "This was a joint decision," Stephanie replied sharply. "Thomas understands the importance of networking." We exchanged a few more stilted words before ending the call. Immediately, I tried calling Thomas, but the call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. "Please call me when you can. Love you." No response came. I stood in my living room surrounded by Christmas memories, an ornament from Thomas's 5th grade class still in my hand. A reindeer with a faded photo of him missing his front teeth. Something broke inside me. I sank to the couch and wept, deep body-shaking sobs that I hadn't experienced since Robert's funeral. Years of built-up frustration and loss poured out. I cried for the son who seemed to be slipping away for the holidays spent alone for Robert, who wasn't here to help me navigate this pain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Stephanie, searching for what I might have done differently. Had I been too clingy, not welcoming enough? Was this punishment for some perceived slight? Morning brought no clarity, only exhaustion and puffy eyes. I shuffled to the mailbox in my robe, not caring who might see. My neighbor Angela waved from her driveway. "Francis, are you feeling okay?" I forced a smile. "Just a touch of a cold." "Well, feel better. Will Thomas be coming for Christmas? I always enjoy seeing that handsome son of yours." The simple question reopened the wound. "No," I managed. "Not this year." Shame kept me from elaborating. What would people think of a mother whose own son didn't want her at Christmas? What kind of parent raises a child who could exclude them during the holidays? I retreated inside, considering my options. Perhaps I could volunteer at a shelter on Christmas Day. Or simply pretend it was any other day, make a simple meal, watch television, go to bed early. The thought of facing the holiday alone made the emptiness inside me expand until it seemed to hollow out my chest entirely. For 3 days, I barely left the house. I ignored calls from friends claiming a winter cold. The Christmas tree stood half-decorated, abandoned like my holiday plans. I ate little and slept less, cycling through grief, anger, and humiliation. On the 4th day, my phone rang persistently. Diane, my oldest friend from my teaching days, wouldn't be ignored. "Frances Williams, I know you're there. Pick up this phone or I'm driving over with soup and interrogating you in person." Despite everything, this made me smile. I answered. "There you are. Angela told me you're under the weather, but she thinks something else is wrong. Talk to me." The concern in her voice broke my carefully constructed dam. Words poured out. The call from Stephanie Thomas's silence, my growing isolation. Once I started, I couldn't stop. "That little witch," Diane exclaimed when I finished. "And Thomas? I have half a mind to drive to his office and drag him out by his ear like I did when he skipped detention in 8th grade. "Please don't," I said, though the image brought a watery laugh. "It would only make things worse." "So what's your plan?" Diane asked. "And don't tell me you're spending Christmas alone watching Hallmark movies and eating microwave dinners." I thought about volunteering. "No," she interrupted. "That's noble, but it's avoidance. Frances Williams doesn't avoid problems. She faces them head on. Remember when the school board tried to cut our library funding? I did remember. I'd organized parents, secured local business donations, and saved not just the library, but expanded its collection." "That was different," I protested. "Was it someone undervalued something precious? You didn't accept it. What are you suggesting, that I crash their dinner?" "Heavens, no. I'm suggesting you show them exactly what they're missing. Host your own dinner. Make it magnificent. Invite everyone who appreciates you." My initial response was resistance. The idea of hosting a holiday gathering while feeling so broken seemed impossible. But later that evening, while half-heartedly dusting the living room, I came across Robert's favorite holiday cookbook. The pages fell open to his prime rib recipe, handwritten notes in the margins, detailing adjustments he'd made over the years. In the front cover he'd written, "The best revenge is living well. The best life is shared with those who value you." I traced his handwriting, remembering how he'd say those words whenever life disappointed him. Robert had always chosen joy and generosity as his response to hurt. What would he do in my situation? I looked around my quiet house. It had once been filled with laughter, love, and friends. When had I allowed that to stop? That night, I made a list. Neighbors who might be alone for the holidays, former colleagues who had retired out of state away from family, students who had kept in touch over the years. The next morning, I began making calls. To my surprise, almost everyone I contacted responded enthusiastically. "I'd love to come, Frances. What can I bring?" I was dreading another corporate event. A real home-cooked meal sounds wonderful. With each positive response, my spirit lifted. I found myself planning menus, jotting down decoration ideas, considering seating arrangements. For the first time since Stephanie's call, I felt purposeful. Shopping for ingredients became a mission. I pulled out Robert's holiday decorations from the attic, discovering treasures I'd been too sad to display in recent years. I polished silver serving platters that had been wedding gifts, aired out the good tablecloths, and counted place settings. When I realized I might not have enough chairs, I didn't panic. Instead, I called more friends. "Could you bring some folding chairs, and maybe that amazing sweet potato casserole you made for the school potluck?" My home began to transform, and with it, my outlook. The half-decorated tree was completed, joined by garlands, lights, and candles. Christmas music played as I cooked and baked the familiar carols, healing something broken inside me. For the first time in years, I felt excited about Christmas. Not because of what I would receive, but because of what I could give a place of belonging for people who might otherwise be alone during the holidays. Word about my Christmas dinner spread through my community like warmth through a cold room. What began as a small gathering of maybe 10 people quickly grew beyond my expectations. Angela, my neighbor, stopped by as I was struggling to rearrange furniture to accommodate more guests. "Frances, this is wonderful what you're doing, but your dining room can't fit 20 people, she observed. "I know," I admitted. "I'm trying to figure out how to make it work with card tables in the living room." Angela shook her head. "Use my house instead. After Gary passed, I renovated the downstairs into one open space. We could easily fit 30 people. I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition, she insisted. My children are spending Christmas with their in-laws this year. I was planning to join your dinner anyway. This way I can contribute meaningfully. That was just the beginning. Mr. Patterson, the music teacher who lived down the street, offered to bring his portable keyboard and play carols. Been practicing all year, but no audience until now, he said with a wink. Diane organized what she called Operation Dessert Storm, coordinating a group of former teachers to bring pies, cookies, and cakes. Nobody leaves hungry from a teacher's gathering, she declared. The most surprising support came from my former students. When Maria Gonzalez, now a successful chef at a downtown restaurant, heard about the dinner from her mother, my former classroom volunteer, she called immediately. Ms. Williams, you taught me fractions using cookie recipes when everyone else had given up on me, she said. Let me help with the cooking. Consider it 20 years of thank yous. James Wilson, my 85-year-old neighbor, whose wife had recently moved to a memory care facility, brought me handwritten recipe cards. Eleanor's family recipes, he explained. She'd want them used for a gathering like this. Then came the call that brought tears to my eyes. My sister Linda from Arizona, who I hadn't seen in almost 2 years, declared she was booking a flight. But you always spend Christmas with Brian's family, I protested, referring to her husband. They'll survive without me for 1 year, she said firmly. My sister needs me more. The next day, my brother Michael called. Linda told me what's happening with Thomas and that snake-in-law of yours. David and I are driving down from Seattle. No arguments. I hadn't expected such an outpouring of support. My refrigerator couldn't contain all the ingredients people dropped off. Extra chairs appeared on my porch with notes attached. The local florist, whose twins I'd taught 15 years ago, delivered centerpieces with a card reading, "For the teacher who made 2 troublemakers feel special." The most difficult moment came 3 days before Christmas. I was at the grocery store comparing prices on prime rib when I heard a familiar voice. "Mom!" I turned to find Thomas standing there, shopping basket in hand, looking surprised. My heart leaped at the sight of him, then constricted, remembering our situation. "Hello, Thomas," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "Are you feeling okay?" "You look tired." His concern seemed genuine, which confused me. "I'm fine, just busy preparing for Christmas." I didn't specify my plans. "Oh." He shifted uncomfortably. "About Christmas dinner." Stephanie explained everything. I said, not wanting to hear the excuses again. She did. He looked oddly uncertain. "Yes, I understand you have more important people to spend the holiday with this year." I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. "Mom, it's not that. Stephanie's parents." "Thomas, it's fine," I interrupted, unable to bear his justifications. "I hope you have a lovely time. You're always welcome at my house if your plans change." I hesitated, then added, "I'm having some friends over for dinner." "Oh, that's good." He looked relieved, which stung more than I expected. Did he think I'd be sitting home alone crying, "I should finish my shopping"? I said, gesturing to my cart. "Merry Christmas, Thomas." I maintained my composure until reaching my car, where tears came freely. But something had shifted. Rather than feeling rejected, I felt resolved. Thomas had made his choice. I was making mine too, choosing joy and community over isolation and self-pity. The week before Christmas transformed Angela's home and my spirits. We worked side by side, hanging garlands, arranging tables borrowed from the community center, and setting up Mr. Patterson's keyboard near the fireplace. When Linda's taxi arrived from the airport, I rushed outside to embrace my sister. Her fierce hug contained decades of shared history. "Let me look at you," she said, holding me at arm's length. "You've lost weight. Has this situation with Thomas been going on longer than you've admitted?" Later that evening, after I shared the full story of the past 2 years, Linda's outrage was both comforting and clarifying. "Francis, you've always been too willing to take blame that isn't yours," she said as we prepared pie crusts. "You've done nothing wrong here. This is about Stephanie controlling Thomas and him allowing it." "I've tried to be welcoming," I defended weakly. "Of course you have. You welcome every stray cat and lonely person into your orbit. That's who you are." Linda's hands worked the dough with more force than necessary. But some people see kindness as weakness. Stephanie sounds like a classic isolator, separating Thomas from anyone who knew him before she controlled the narrative. Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a text from Thomas. "Mom, are you doing okay? Haven't heard from you." I showed Linda, who raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Guilty conscience, maybe. I texted back, "I'm fine, busy with holiday preparations. Hope your work dinner goes well." His response came quickly. "Thanks. Stephanie's mom has everyone running around like it's a military operation. Miss your relaxed approach to holidays." I didn't know how to interpret this olive branch. Was Thomas having doubts? I kept my response light. Christmas is about joy, not perfection. Love you. Christmas Eve morning brought a flurry of activity. Volunteers arrived at Angela's house carrying food decorations and extra serving utensils. Maria commandeered the kitchen with professional efficiency, directing our amateur efforts with good humor. "Ms. Williams, your knife skills have improved since you taught us to make applesauce in 3rd grade," she teased. Tables were arranged in a U-shape to facilitate conversation. Battery-operated candles, safer with so many people, were placed alongside fresh greenery. Mr. Patterson practiced carols softly in the corner, while James shared stories about Christmases from his youth. The house smelled of pine cinnamon and roasting meat, the essence of Christmas captured in fragrance. Standing in the midst of this joyful chaos, I experienced a moment of doubt. "What if Thomas shows up?" I whispered to Linda. "Then we set another place," she replied simply. "But don't put your happiness on hold, waiting for him to come around." As evening approached, I received an unexpected text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Williams, this is Javier Lopez Maria's cousin. I'm working catering at the Lawrence holiday dinner tonight. Thought you should know, I overheard Stephanie's mother saying she was glad they finally got rid of Thomas's clingy mother. Stephanie agreed it was better for everyone. Thomas wasn't in the room. Sorry to share bad news, but Maria says you deserve the truth." The message struck like a physical blow. So it had been a coordinated effort to exclude me, not just a space limitation. And worse, Thomas might not even know. For a brief moment, anger surged through me. The temptation to forward the message to Thomas to expose the deception. But what would that accomplish on Christmas Eve, except more pain? "Bad news," Linda asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. Her face darkened. "Those manipulative, it doesn't matter," I interrupted, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "Look around, Linda. This is what matters now." And it was true. The room was filling with people bringing light and love into my life. Whatever game Stephanie and her mother were playing, I refused to join. I had built something beautiful from their rejection. As twilight fell, I placed a framed photo of Robert next to Angela's fireplace. "Wish you were here to see this," I whispered, "but I think you'd be proud." The early arrivals raised glasses of mulled cider and a Christmas Eve toast. "To found family," Diane proclaimed, "and to Francis, who reminds us what the holidays are truly about." For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully that night in Angela's guest room, with Linda across the hall and Michael and David arriving in the morning. Whatever happened next, I was not alone. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through Angela's guest room window. The sound of Michael's booming laughter downstairs told me my brother and his husband had arrived. I dressed carefully in a deep red sweater and black slacks, adding the pearl necklace Robert had given me on our last Christmas together. Linda appeared in my doorway with coffee. "Merry Christmas, big sister," she said. "Ready for your grand hosting duties." Downstairs was controlled chaos. Michael and David had brought fresh croissants and were arranging them on platters. Maria and 2 assistant chefs from her restaurant were prepping vegetables and checking the prime rib. Angela was directing a small army of neighbors in final decoration adjustments. "Francis," Michael enveloped me in a bear hug. "This is magnificent. From heartbreak to the hottest ticket in town. That's my sister." Time accelerated as final preparations fell into place. At precisely 2 p.m., the first official guests arrived. The Rodriguez family from down the street, their 3 children carrying carefully wrapped homemade ornaments as gifts. By 3 o'clock, Angela's spacious home hummed with conversation and laughter. People of all ages mingled together. Former students now grown with children of their own elderly neighbors, meeting young families, colleagues from my teaching days, reconnecting after years apart. Mr. Patterson began playing White Christmas, and spontaneous singing broke out around the keyboard. I moved through the crowd, ensuring everyone had drinks and appetizers, making introductions between strangers who soon became friends. "Francis," Angela whispered, "this is what community looks like. You've created something magical here." Before dinner, I asked for everyone's attention. Standing near Robert's photo, I raised my glass. "I want to thank you all for being here today. Some of us have known each other for decades, some just met today. But looking around this room, I see what matters most at Christmas: connection, kindness, and belonging. Before we eat, let's take a moment of silence to remember those who aren't with us today, but remain in our hearts." In that quiet moment, I thought of Robert, of Thomas, and surprisingly of Stephanie, too. I hoped they were finding joy in their own way. When the silence ended, Mr. Patterson played a triumphant chord. "Dinner is served," I announced. The feast was magnificent: prime rib cooked to perfection, Maria's professional side dishes, and contributions from a dozen different family recipes. Wine flowed, stories were shared, and laughter punctuated every conversation. Diane stood to offer another toast. "To Francis, who taught us all that family is sometimes who you choose, not just who you're born to, and who showed us that when one door closes, you build a bigger door and invite the whole neighborhood in." As dessert was being served, an impressive display of pies, cookies, and Maria's signature Yule log, the doorbell rang. Angela went to answer while I was deep in conversation with my former principal about retirement travel plans. The room didn't immediately quiet when Thomas stepped in, but a ripple of awareness spread gradually. Linda noticed first, touching my arm and nodding toward the entryway. My son stood alone, looking uncertain and out of place. He held a small gift bag and wore the expression I remembered from his childhood after he'd made a mistake, a mixture of remorse and hope for forgiveness. The conversation around me faded as I crossed the room. Up close, I could see Thomas had been crying. "Mom," he said, voice breaking, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Around us, a respectful silence fell, guests pretending interest in their desserts while watching the drama unfold. "Know what, Thomas?" I asked quietly. "That Stephanie told you not to come. That her mother orchestrated this whole thing. That they lied to me about you declining our invitation." The words tumbled out. "I only found out when I overheard them laughing about it tonight, about how they finally had me to themselves." My heart ached for his pain, even as vindication washed over me. "Where is Stephanie now?" I asked. "Still at her parents'. We had a huge fight. I walked out." He glanced around the room, seeming to fully register the gathering for the first time. "What is all this?" Linda appeared at my side. "This is what your mother did instead of sitting alone feeling sorry for herself. She built something beautiful." A complex mixture of emotions crossed Thomas's face: shame, admiration, and something like awe. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I've been blind. Can I stay?" The room held its collective breath. In that moment, I realized I had a choice. I could reject him, as I had been rejected making a point about consequences. Or I could demonstrate the very values this gathering represented: forgiveness, inclusion, and love without conditions. "There's always room for one more," I said, taking his hand. "Come meet everyone." Relief flooded his features as I led him through the crowd, introducing him to my community. Many knew him from stories or from his childhood, greeting him warmly despite knowing the circumstances. "Thomas, last time I saw you, you were playing Joseph in the school nativity play," Mr. Patterson exclaimed. "Still remember how you forgot your lines and improvised that speech about the poor accommodations in Bethlehem?" As the evening progressed, Thomas integrated into the gathering, helping serve coffee and dessert, reconnecting with old family friends and meeting new ones. I noticed him in deep conversation with Michael, nodding seriously at whatever advice my brother was offering. Later, as guests mingled around the fireplace, Thomas pulled me aside. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said softly. "Things with Stephanie haven't been right for a while. This isn't just about tonight. She's been controlling. I've let her isolate me from you, from my friends, from everything I used to love." "I noticed," I admitted, "but I didn't want to interfere." "I wish you had," he said. "I might have seen things clearly sooner." He took a deep breath. "I don't think our marriage is going to survive this, and I'm actually relieved." I squeezed his hand. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out after the holidays. Tonight, just be here with us." And he was, laughing at James's terrible jokes, singing off key with Diane and her teacher friends, helping Angela's grandson build a Lego set he'd received that morning. For a few precious hours, I had my son back. As midnight approached, guests gradually departed with warm hugs and promises to stay in touch. Email addresses and phone numbers were exchanged, plans made for coffee dates and future gatherings. "Same time next year?" Angela asked as she hugged departing neighbors. "Absolutely," several voices responded. "Best Christmas I've had in 20 years, James declared. "Eleanor would have loved every minute." Maria and her team cleaned the kitchen with professional efficiency before leaving with containers of leftovers. "My family wants to thank you," she told me. "This food will feed my grandparents and cousins for days." Mr. Patterson packed away his keyboard after a final rendition of "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," his voice cracking with emotion. "Francis, you've given an old man something to practice for again. Monthly music nights in the new year." Thomas stayed to help with final cleanup, working alongside Linda and Michael in comfortable silence. When the last dish was washed and the last tablecloth folded, the 5 of us collapsed in Angela's living room, too tired to move, but too content to leave. "I should go," Thomas said eventually. "I have a hotel room downtown." "You're not going back to Stephanie tonight?" Linda asked directly. Thomas shook his head. "No, I told her I need time to think, but honestly I think I've already made my decision." He looked at me. "Mom, can we have brunch tomorrow? Just us." "Of course," I said. "My place at 11. After Thomas left, Michael raised an eyebrow. "Think they'll work it out?" "For his sake, I hope not," Linda muttered. "That's not our decision," I reminded them. "Whatever happens, I'll support him." We said goodnight to Angela and returned to my house, the 3 of us siblings together for the first time in years. Sitting in my living room with cups of tea, we reminisced about childhood Christmases and spoke of plans for the coming year. "You know what impresses me most," Michael said. "You turned a cruel exclusion into something inclusive and beautiful. That's real strength, Francis." The next morning brought a flurry of messages and calls. Guests expressing gratitude, sharing photos from the evening, and suggesting future gatherings. Angela reported that several neighbors who couldn't attend had heard about the dinner and wanted to be included next time. Thomas arrived for brunch precisely at 11, looking both exhausted and lighter somehow. Over French toast and coffee, we had the first honest conversation we'd shared in years. "I think I got lost," he admitted. Stephanie represented this perfect, ambitious future, everything measured and planned. The right connections, the right appearances. I forgot what actually makes me happy. "Which is," I prompted. "This," he gestured around my cozy kitchen. "Authenticity, real connections, the freedom to be imperfect." We talked about his marriage, how the control had increased gradually, how Stephanie and her mother worked in tandem to shape every aspect of their lives, how he'd surrendered his own desires to keep peace. "I'm not blameless," Thomas acknowledged. "I allowed it. I didn't stand up for you, for myself, for what matters." I reached across the table to take his hand. "We all make mistakes, sweetheart. The question is, what we learn from them." Over the next week, Thomas moved into my guest room while sorting out his next steps. He filed for separation just after New Year's, a decision that brought both grief and relief. Stephanie called me once, voice cold with fury. "You've poisoned him against me, against the future we planned." "Thomas is a grown man making his own choices," I replied calmly. "I wish you healing and happiness, Stephanie. I truly do." January brought new rhythms to my life. Regular community dinners at Angela's music nights with Mr. Patterson, cooking classes with Maria, and healing conversations with Thomas. The circle of connection that began on Christmas continued to expand. Looking back on that painful phone call in December, I marvel at how exclusion led to belonging beyond anything I could have imagined. By closing their holiday table to me, Stephanie and her mother inadvertently opened the door to a richer, more authentic community than I'd experienced in years. Life will always bring painful rejections and closed doors. The lesson I carry forward is that sometimes being shut out from where you thought you belonged leads you exactly where you need to be, surrounded by people who value you for exactly who you are. Have you ever experienced rejection that ultimately led you somewhere better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that. Exclusion can sometimes be the beginning of something beautiful. Thank you for joining me for this story, and I wish you holidays filled with authentic connection and joy.